I'm gonna have some hot takes for Sanderson and Cosmere, so don't kill me, okay? Sanderson fans are gonna hate me. What up, though? This is Mrxfix here, coming at you with my 2024 year-end book tier list. We did one of these last year's, and I don't think I read quite as much books this year, but I'm excited to get into it. This is very much a Brandon Sanderson Cosmere heavy year for me. That was kind of my goal and my what I wanted to read through this year, how I went through all of Wheel of Time last year. So I wanted to get through everything before Wind and Truth came out, and I did, and I just finished up Wind and Truth. So here we go. Made it in time for the tier list. Let's hop on over there. All right, I think most of these are in the order that I read them. So starting off, I read Elantris and Hope of Elantris last year, so I'm not going to be covering that. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I am already starting off heavy. Put it at high A. I really liked Warbreaker. I think it's not talked about enough in the fandom. I really enjoyed it. I liked Siri as a character and kind of the mystery and everything, and definitely like going to breaths and everything. I should say I'm going to try to keep most of these, for the most part, spoiler free. I'll do my best not to ruin anything, especially for the new things. But I really like kind of I feel like Warbreaker was the foundation for the Cosmere. There's so much that you learn from Warbreaker that really kind of turns all the gears in the Cosmere and things like that. Next up is Things I'll Never Forget. It's the memories. I think some memories is of a soldier of a Marine in Vietnam. This is a very interesting read. I'm also going to put it in A. It's just you know, as an American, we hear a lot of different things about Vietnam, and it's the first time I've actually like sat down and read a first-hand account of what it was actually like for people there. And I guess water buffalo are hard to kill, and they can get pretty mad. That's one thing that really stuck out to me, which is, you know, out of all the things in a Vietnam story, you think that wouldn't be it, but it was very interesting. Just kind of the day-to-day for everyone and what it was actually like there. Next up is Dune. Oh, okay. I think we're starting out strong. Ooh. Should have thought this before. I'm put it in A. Put it in A. It's not my favorite Dune book, but it started the whole the whole series, not the whole trilogy. I guess you could argue the first three are a trilogy. 4 is the kind of a in-between book, and then there's the rest. But what's not to be said that hasn't been said about Dune? I think it kind of gets... there's sort of a slog in it. At least I thought there was a slog. Kind of 2/3 of the way in. Almost like from the end of movie 1 to kind of like... I don't want to say too much because again, not spoiler, but kind of part of the way through... Basically through movie 2, there's a lot that happens in that chunk that they speed through pretty fast that I kind of just thought was a slog. Wasn't really my thing. I know a lot of people like it. Next up, Dune Messiah, the sequel. Actually, my favorite of the Dune books. Is it because it's short? Maybe. But I'm excited for the movie. I'm going to put that... Yeah, I think that's a good spot for it. Put it right there. It's the follow-up of, you know, Paul Atreides and his story. And... it's definitely a lot more philosophical, and really most of the other Dune is philosophical at its core, but definitely the later Dune books get much more philosophical. In like God Emperor Doom, there's like this whole, one of my favorite chapters is just this conversation between two people and deep philosophy of ruling and all that, and Dune Messiah is really where that starts, and I really liked it. Is it my favorite Dune? We'll come to that. Okay, sure. Next up, Way of Kings. Alright. I'm going to have some hot takes for Sanderson and Cosmere, so don't kill me, okay? So, Way of Kings, putting it in B. I struggled through this book. There was a lot of slog and grind, especially because I think it's 1,000 pages. Most of these, I'll point out the ones I didn't listen to on audiobook because there's a lot. So the whole Dune series I didn't listen to an audiobook, but for the most part, everything else, I think everything else here, audiobook. It's the way I consume most of my literature. And man, Whew, Way of Kings was rough. But one thing I found out for Stormlight is for audiobook, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, who did Wheel of Time, and they're pretty big narrators. I don't know if it's just kind of the style of the books or kind of just where they went in their narration, but they're a lot slower than Wheel of Time, and kind of when they were in the 90s and all that. So I find, believe it or not, 1.4 speed, especially like I think Oathbringer is when I put on 1.4 speed, and Stormlight got a lot easier that way. So maybe if I went back and listened to it on 1.4 speed, it wouldn't feel as much of a slog, but definitely during those times, like, come on, this is so long. And I didn't really know about the characters or care for them. Obviously, the prologue, everyone knows about prologue, you know, Seth, the son, whatever, wore white on the day he was to kill a king or something like that. Not a spoiler if you make it to the prologue. Not the actual prologue, not the prologue, but anyways, there's definitely some highs. But yeah, we'll move on. Being Elvis, it's like a life of loneliness. I'll put this as a B. It was very, I'm not the biggest Elvis fan, but I really liked Ray. I think it was Ray Connolly. It was the author of this. I really liked his Being John Lennon book, so I went and I'm like, you know, I do appreciate Elvis and all that, and I like his hits, but I don't really know much about the guy, so I went back and listened to it, and it's kind of crazy how he just kind of went with whatever he saw the authority figures in his life, what they wanted to do, which I guess kind of is a spoiler, but this is historical, so spoiler, Elvis, you happened just, 70 years ago, 70, 80 years ago, so don't really know if it's a spoiler. I enjoyed it. It was good. I think it was a quick read. I think it was like 12 hours, so not that bad when we get into Stormlight, where the last one was 60 hours. Next up, we got Alloy of Law. I really liked Alloy of Law. I'll put it there. First, in Mistborn Era 2, it shifts from, your fantasy world to more of a Western, steampunk Western. So at first when I read Mistborn, a long time ago, after it just came out, well, I think Era 2 had just come out. I looked into it and no, I don't really want to, I like fantasy, I don't want the Western feel. And I went in with little to no expectations, kind of probably actually an expectation of disliking it. And I really enjoyed this first book. It was good. Obviously, that you get your first introduction to Wax and Wayne, and I just think this one really hit. I know that's kind of a hot take. I think a lot of people really like kind of the middle books for Era 2, but I enjoyed this first one. It was a breath of fresh air from just the standard fantasy I was reading, and I enjoyed the characters. Next up, The Unseen Realm. This is kind of like a more spiritual book, and the spiritual beings in just with Abrahamic religions and things like that. It was okay. There's a few cool things. Obviously, that's not going to be for everybody. If you're not a spiritual person, or you don't find those interesting or whatever, then you're not going to like it. It's very almost like textbooky, but it kind of goes back into the ancient Hebrew language and everything. There's some really interesting parts, but for overall, it was an okay read. Children of Dune. Okay. I think, we're going to go B tier for Children of Dune. There are parts of Children of Dune I really liked. There's also beef swelling. And if you know, you know. Words of Radiance. Okay. Words of Radiance. Put it up here, high A. I think high A is where it's at. This is, I think, what most people consider, or it's the popular pick for the best Stormlight book. One of my favorites of the Stormlight archive, as it's rated so high. Obviously, you'll see when I get there, which one I think is better than that, but I think it has some of the best of it. There was some slog. Honestly, one of my favorite chapters was when one person gets released from prison, and that's all I'll say. Believe it or not, I like that, and just like the character and development behind that more Honestly, I like that moment better than the fight before that led to the imprisonment, but yeah, I'm going to put that as a high A. Last House on Needless Street. I think this is really the only book this year I didn't like, but I will say I am not the target audience for this book. I read it for my podcast, The Top Podcast, which you can find in my YouTube links and bios. It's a horror, psychological horror. That's not really my thing. We did it for kind of an off week because it was a short, easy read. I think I read it in 2 days. Wasn't my thing, but it seems like I'm more on the negative side than the other people that have read it. The other people I know that have read it have really liked it. So if you're into horror, and especially psychological horror, go check it out. Not my thing, but you might like it. Next up, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Put it high C. Another thing we did for the podcast, an off week, we went through, I think those were the only 2 books we went through this year, but I mean, it's good. I'm not the biggest Potter fan. I didn't get into him until much later, age-wise compared to other people. I just want to know, where's the name tags? I don't know if you guys see my shorts, but all the first year should have name tags, so there shouldn't be anyone need to ask if that's Harry Potter. There's a name tag, and that's not why it's rated C, but I just think obviously there's better Harry Potters. It's kind of where it started, and yeah, it's kind of its own thing. Shadows of Self. I'm putting B. There are parts of this book I really liked and parts I didn't like, which I guess there's a lot on this book, a lot of in the Cosmere that I can say that. I thought it was yeah, I'm gonna leave it right there. Fight me. I really like kind of the conflict of it, but I feel like the charm wore off from the first book, so it just wasn't as magical in a sense, and I don't know, just didn't hit. Bands of Mourning. All right, another hot take. Hated the ending. Yeah. This is, I don't know, man. Era 2, these middle books really kind of grinded on me. And like I said, they're most people's favorite books, so I am probably in the minority. In fact, I know I am a minority, so I should go look at the Goodreads, but they're not my favorite. I don't like how Bands of Mourning ended. I think there's something Sanderson does that has become kind of a problem. If you know, you know. Yeah. Arcanum Unbound, a bunch of short stories for the Cosmere. There's some good ones, some I didn't really care for, or didn't really care about, I should say, like Shadows in the Forest or whatever was pretty solid. That's probably my favorite one. But the 11th Metal, another hot... Oh gosh, I'm just gonna get flamed here. I'm not really a Kelsier fan. Me and like 2 other people I've talked to, we're the 3 holding up the anti-Kelsier things. Yeah, that's obviously a small part. I think it was like 25 pages, so it wasn't a big part of it, but it's a compilation of short stories. God Emperor Dune. Woo, baby, I am torn. I thought I knew this list going in, but now that I'm actually going in. Alright, oh gosh. We're gonna put it here. Also, I should note, I did try to keep the covers for these. I got the new, I think these are Barnes & Noble, these ones right here for the Dune series, but I really wanted to know that Dune, I mean, it gets weird after the first book, but it really starts to get weird, and I wanted that weird one. The basically God Emperor Dune, the whole premise is, God Emperor of Dune, is, would you love me if I was still a worm? And there's some really nice philosophical things, and it was an intriguing read. I enjoyed it. Also, relatively short. I think Dune is the longest of the 4 I've read. I think Dune is the longest, then Children of Doom. And I think God Emperor of Doom, and then Dune Messiah. So maybe that's telling that, you know, some of the shorter ones are my favorite, but I don't think it is. Oathbringer. Sanderson, Book 3, Stormlight Archive, I think is my favorite of the Stormlight Archive. This book was weird. It was kind of like my Feast for Crows, and I read it, and I'm like, you know, that was good. it wasn't my favorite at the time. But then, like, the more I think back on it, I'm like, man, I actually really like that book. Which is weird, because if you notice on my channel, I did kind of like a vlog for the first 2 Stormlight books. And then, like, I think for the first half of Oathbringer, I'm just like, I got nothing here. I'm not going to be doing these vlogs anymore. And I ended up really liking it at the end. Not my favorite for, like, the past character, like, each Stormlight book takes one character and you see their past. Not my favorite there, but honestly, overall, the more I think about it, the more this book ruminates on me, I think it's my favorite Stormlight book. So for that, I'm going to give it an S tier. It is the second longest book I've read behind A Wind in Truth. Next one up, Dawn Shard. I'll give this one a high B. No, high B. I really enjoyed it. It's just a novella. Quick, read it in a day or two. Has a very huge, not overarching, but like the magic developed and revealed in this book really kind of shifts your perspective on the Cosmere. So it's definitely, if you're wanting to get more into the Cosmere, that's a book you want to read if you haven't read it already and you're in the Stormlight and things like that. Next up, Rhythm of War. My least favorite Stormlight book. This one I think is not as much of a hot take compared to like my Way of Kings. I think this one is definitely, well, book 5 out of the ones that have been out for a little bit. Book 4 is definitely the most divisive, as in there's a lot of like nitty gritty kind of magic things, and for some people that worked really well. I was kind of bored of it. I did not care for the like historical perspective of the characters in this book, and I know Sanderson said that was hard because he wrote it during like COVID, and there's a lot of it happens when like, people are trapped, and he said that was kind of hard on him. So maybe that's the reason, but just was not for me. Next up, Lost Metal. I think, definitely, I think it's my second favorite. Yeah, I don't think it's better than Dune, so we're gonna put it high B. It is my second favorite of Era 2 Mistborn. Mostly, a lot of it is because, like, you know, I've read so much Cosmere up to here, and then like this is when the gauntlets kind of come off for, you know, just Mistborn interconnectivity, and you start seeing other powers from other worlds and other magic systems, and that was just really fun for me. It's just like, oh man, I know what those stamps are from and everything. I know this one also is kind of, it seems like you either love it or you hate it. I think this one definitely is more for Cosmere fans more so than just Mistborn, especially Era 2 fans, but I really enjoy the Lost Metal, and we'll see where it goes in Mistborn Ghostbloods. Next up, Tress of the Emerald Sea. Ooh, yeah. It's my first cozy fantasy book I've ever read, and the genre's not really for me. It's not my favorite, but I enjoyed it, and I think it was the perfect length where I'm just like, you know, it got to the end, I'm like, I am glad it's not any longer, and it was just the perfect length, perfect little bite-sized thing. Some of the twists pretty easy to grab onto or figure out, but it was a fun book for what it was. Next up, my book of the year, my favorite Sanderson book, and I think this one I know is a hot take. My wife and I both, this is like one of our favorite Sanderson books, or I think it's both of our favorite Sanderson books, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which is weird. I think out of the 3 Cosmere secret projects, which are Tress of the Emerald Sea, Yumi the Nightmare Painter, and the Sunlit Man, Yumi is really, I feel like, considered the worst out of all 3 of them, and man, I just absolutely loved it, especially that cover, and we got the physical book off Dragonsteel with that cover, and it is such a beautiful book. Again, read it over audiobook, but I really enjoyed the dichotomy of the 2 characters, and it's a body swap story, and it's just really cool, and I'm not really an emotional person, but that even hit me in some of the feels with some of the stuff, and it is so great. I went and watched, what was the anime? It was semi-inspired by, but that was good. I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. My book of the year. If you haven't read it, it is a lighthearted. There is some. We got my boy's cousin to read it, and at first the nightmare, the painter, comes off, and it's totally on purpose as like he's the edgy guy, you know. I have to stick in the shadows and stay alone type thing. And that's totally on purpose, and it's like, you might get a little cringe at first, but it's really good. I enjoyed this book immensely. Next up, The Gunslinger by Stephen King, Dark Tower Book 1. I read this book. This is the other book that wasn't Dune that I physically read. And I read the first 4 Dunes in the first half of the year, and then the rest I basically forced my way through The Gunslinger. I heard this is one of the weaker of the Gunslinger, or the Dark Tower, the Dark Tower series. This is my first ever Stephen King book. Some people will say that's a mistake, that I should read a lot more Stephen King before getting the Dark Tower. Well, lucky for them, I don't think. I might go back to the sequel. I hear 2 and 3 are just crazy and wild, but I wasn't really a fan of it. Especially as one thing, as a reader, I feel like I have to finish a chapter before I can put the book down. It's like the conclusion, I gotta get to that chapter ending, get to the next one. And the first like act, I don't know, section, has your regular chapter intervals, but then the ones after that, there's like 4 chapter breaks, so you just kind of have to go with the scene breaks. That ultimately that didn't, affect my scoring of it, but that did just kind of perturb me. Next up, Sunlit Man. Where do I want to put the Sunlit Man? Ooh. I think it was my lead. Man. Sanderson fans are going to hate me. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's... Oh, gosh. This is almost like a Stormlight 5.5. It happens after the events of Storm. I don't want to say too much without it being a spoiler. Yeah, definitely with this next book changes Sunlit Man in perspective, and I think after reading Wind and Truth, going back to Sunlit Man will actually probably give it a bump up. But just going after, reading it in this order, I did publication order for the Cosmere, and I think that is a very middle of the road, I guess kind of on the lower side, but yeah. Wind and Truth. All right. There we go. So, like I said, I just finished this like a couple days ago, whatever. The way that Wind and Truth was to me is it is the most consistently paced and just most consistent Stormlight book. It doesn't have the lows and kind of the slog of the other Stormlight books, but also it doesn't quite have those high highs for me. So this book has been very polarizing. I definitely think I'll need some time to really sit back and ruminate on everything that happened. I mean, this is a huge arc that finished up, and the implications going forward are obviously very drastic and crazy, and it's a game changer in the Cosmere. But for me, it is right in the middle. If I was to rank the Stormlight books, obviously here, that's number 3. I think it's just the most consistent. There's some weird things. There's a lot more modern language in there, which is weird, but yeah, I think that's about where I'm going to put it. It's the middle of the Stormlight archives for me. And it's also the longest book, at almost 1,400 pages. Next up, this one no one's ever heard of. I discovered it by accident on the podcast. You can go find it out. I think it's our first Christmas episode of this previous year, so 2024. It is Death on the Polar Express by Oscar. Oh gosh, what's his name? It's so small. Let me pull this up right quick. He's definitely an indie author. I think this is his, if not his only book, this is one of his few books he's published. What is his name? It'll pop up here. Here you go. Oscar de Murel, whatever. I don't know how to say that. It is a book that does not take itself too seriously, but it is a fun book for the holiday season. I think it's like 6 hours, so you can listen to it in a couple of days. I mean, most people don't have 6 hours to read or listen to it, but it is a very fun book for the holiday season. It's basically one of Santa's elves is murdered, and he has to figure out who done it. And you hear very many Christmas swears and things like that, frosticles and everything like that. We kind of talk about on the podcast. It is it's nothing mind-blowing, but it is a fun, enjoyable read. I don't want to. Okay, it's like I said. This is hard. It is enjoyable. I don't think like objectively I can put it higher than these, but it did what it was supposed to do. Oh gosh. There we go. I'm gonna put it after Wave Kings. Oh, Sanderson fans are not gonna like me. Oh, okay. So that's it. I might bump. Ooh, just the balance out. I like how this is kind of more of a bell curve and it's more symmetrical. So this is where I'm gonna finally put it. Move up Warbreaker. I really enjoyed Warbreaker. It was a fun book, and it also had wide Cosmere. I already said it has wide standing Cosmere effects. But that is my 2024 books in review tier list. Let me know what you guys want to see. Do you guys like the vlogs? I know I did, I think 4 of them for the first 2 Mistborn Era 2 and the first 2 Stormlight. Next up, I'm going for Narnia books. All 7 of those. I know my wife is a big fan and she's like talked about, so I'm gonna go read them. I think all of them are like like 30 hours, so that won't take long. But let me know what books or what series I should read. I already got a ever-growing list, but I'd be interested to hear what you guys like and what you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was, and if you've read Yumi the Nightmare Painter, and why you think it is the best of the secret projects released so far. Other than that, hope you guys have a great day, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.